Hello, welcome to CrossCurrents, produced by the City of Fort Collins in cooperation with the Larimer County League of Women Voters. I'm Barbara Rutstein, the moderator of today's program. Our topic is Jail Tax Extension, Effects on Larimer County. In 1997, Larimer County voters approved a 0.2% sales tax for improvements and operations at the Larimer County Jail that serves all of the communities in our county. This tax will expire at the end of the year. Although running the jail is a county responsibility, voters have rejected a property tax and 2 sales taxes since 2006 that would have continued funding for the jail beyond 2014. This November, we will vote again on jail funding. The county commissioners are proposing a 0.15% sales tax to replace the current 0.2% sales tax that is expiring. To explore the issues surrounding the need for the sales tax, we have on my right Troy Krenning, a Loveland City Council member. On his right is John Knezevich, CPA and former mayor and council member in Fort Collins. On his right is Sidna Rashid, spokesperson for Jail is Not the Answer Issue Committee, and on her right is Tom Donnelly, a Larimer County Commissioner. Welcome to all of you and to our studio and viewing audiences. Let's begin with some background, Tom. How has the money been used that was approved in 1997?
First, let me say thank you, Barbara, for moderating this forum. And I'd like to thank the League for offering the opportunity to come in here and speak about this issue. And it's a complex issue, so we're glad that the League has stepped forward to take a leadership position. I'm very glad to be here. I'd like to also, just before I begin, very briefly thank Sidna. She's a very active and engaged citizen in our community, and I really am glad she's here. The mayor, of course, is a great friend of mine, and Mr. Krenning and I served on the Loveland Planning Commission together about 100 years ago. So we've known each other a long time and have been very friendly in that entire time. So this is a great panel for us to, I think, to explore this issue. Let me begin by saying I think you did a great job of kind of laying out the issue. This is a sales tax, 0.2%, 2 cents on every $10 that was approved by the citizens of Larimer County in 1997. And it was really, the 0.2% tax is really broken down into 2 components. There's a 0.05% component which funded construction. Primarily it funded the construction of a new wing on the jail, which increased the capacity of the jail by about 40%, 42% I think is the exact number, but nominally 40%. And then there was a 0.15% component of that tax which funded the operations of that new wing of the jail. So what the Board of Commissioners has asked or has placed on the ballot is an initiative to continue that 0.15% of the tax that has historically been used for the operations of that part of the county jail. Since the 97 ballot measure was approved, Larimer County has always continued to strive to find new and better ways to provide criminal justice services. Among those are a number of things I think we'll talk about this evening. We have invested heavily in alternative sentencing programs for offenders. We have been leaders in the nation, really, with a number of programs like, for instance, DUI court, drug court. We've recently begun a new wellness court, which is a mental health type of court system for folks who have mental health needs. We've been very active with work-enders and weekenders programs, which give folks an opportunity to serve their sentences differently than just to be incarcerated into the jail. So those things have been allowed in large part because of this sales tax, which we have used to fund a portion of the operations. That's offsetting about $7 million a year in funding that can be used for other sources. If this tax expires, the county will have to continue to fund the jail. We'll have to dip into our general fund, our general operating funds. to do so. So we will have to replace that $7 million that's currently provided by the tax with general fund dollars. And so I think the gist of this argument really is what will the county quit doing? We'll have to quit doing $7 million worth of programming, and what is that $7 million? Some of the things that we do, the things that I think most people think are rather cutting edge as far as criminal justice, are also the things that are not mandated services for counties to provide. Things like alternative sentencing and DUI courts, those things are not mandated services. Those are things that we're able to provide, which actually do provide quite a benefit to the community because of the rehabilitative aspects of the programs. Those are things that are not mandated services that the county could actually stop doing if we were forced to.
Okay, well, let's get somebody else in here.
But let me just say one more thing,
Okay.
because there's one other thing that really factors into this largely, and it needs to be brought out on the table right away. The commissioners, after the tax extension measure that failed 3 years ago, last time I was actually chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, the people spoke, we listened, we made plans to decrease our spending, to absorb the operations of the jail sales tax. We thought we could use some of our reserves, and as you kind of mentioned earlier, wait for assessed values to rise and kind of make those numbers match until we could probably hold the tide until the assessed values rise enough to make us whole again. Unfortunately, in 2012, we had the worst wildfire in Larimer County history, the Hyde Park fire, and then last year, of course, we had the devastating floods. The floods alone have caused $100 million in damage to public infrastructure. And just to put that in perspective, Barbara, in a typical year, the county will do about $10 million in infrastructure work on our roads and bridges. So about 10 years worth of work will have to be done in the next 2 years, and that's on top of the regular maintenance work that we have to do. So we have a feeling our reserves will be stretched very thin. We think this is a responsible measure to take moving forward to make sure that reserves are replenished and are healthy, and that the county, God forbid we have another disaster, will be able to answer that call. And so I apologize for going so long, but
Okay.
I want to frame the issue for you.
So then let's go to Sidna and then Troy. Do you think this money was well spent? Let's start with Sidna.
Well, I'd like to say that you covered a lot of ground there, Tom. Thank you very much, but
We
it's
can
kind
get
of
to it a bit at a
confusing.
time.
Yeah, you're kind of conflating issues here. So let's just talk about the construction of the new jail. The construction of the new jail, I think it was completed in 2001, but it increased the inmate population that they could hold to 550 inmates. Now, we've never gotten that high recently. Now, last year, our inmate population, the average inmate population was 447. And it's been going down a little bit since 2005, I think, might have been the peak. Now, what was the inmate population in 2000 in the old jail was 287. That's a big difference between what we have, the number we have in the jail today. And the thing that concerns me is that we seem to have built this jail, so now we feel we have to fill it. And that's my major concern with this. The problem with the jail is it's a huge facility. It costs $19 million just to run the jail. It's a discrete operating unit within the sheriff's office. $19 million. And the thing is that if you want to decrease that amount that is spent, you're going to have to close wings. You're not going to get any decreasing costs through any other way but decreasing the wing, closing wings, and then letting go some of the guards or whatever. Because the biggest part of that is the personnel cost. The Douglas County, I went online to check because I would keep hearing how great, and it is great. Captain Palmer, who is in charge of the jail, is dedicated to improving the efficiency. But our jail seems to be quite expensive. I checked Douglas County, which has about the same population we do, which is about 300,000, has a jail population of 296. That was in 2012. That gives them an incarceration rate of 99. But Boulder County, which I kept hearing was the incarceration rate there is so much worse than ours, well, their incarceration rate is 155, ours is 141. And they had an average daily jail population of 480, but their jail just cost them $12.6 million. The Douglas County Jail cost $13 million. So I don't, my problem is the cost of the jail and the fact that after it was built, all of a sudden, we had so many more inmates than we did before it was built.
Okay, Troy, what's your take on what we've done with the money that we got in, or that the county got in 1997?
Well, I have to say, of course, you introduced me as being a member of the Loveland City Council, and I am that. I don't speak for the council tonight, but in my real life role, I'm a defense attorney. I'm a lawyer, and so I practice in Larimer County, Boulder, Adams, throughout northern Colorado. I have to say that without exception, Larimer County has probably the crown jewel of all jails. Was the money spent correctly? Probably. Do we have something to be proud of? I suppose if we can be proud of jails, we have something to be proud of. But I guess my opposition to this tax is the same as it was to the last time this question came up and the last time Commissioner Donnelly and I met to debate it. And that is that I really believe that we're being misled. This isn't a tax about whether or not we want to continue to operate the jail at the superior level that Sheriff Smith and his staff operated at. I'm disturbed by a couple of things. One, for some reason, we can never allow ourselves to allow a tax to sunset. This year alone, we're going to face two questions about taxes that should be sunsetting. The open lands tax is scheduled to sunset, and we're asking to extend that for 25 years. This jail tax is supposed to sunset, and we're asking to extend that for 25 years. And really what's going on, and it was highlighted, I thought, by Commissioner Johnson's editorial that was published in my hometown newspaper, the Loveland Reporter-Herald, where he pretty much admits that if the voters say no to this, again, like they have previously, it will not impact the jail. It will not impact the jail operation. It will simply impact the other services that the county provides to us. And so I guess why don't we call this what it really is? This is a tax to fund the general fund of Larimer County. It has nothing to do whatsoever with the jail, and I'm sure Commissioner Donnelly will concede that. There might have to be some small, cuts to the jail, but the overall cuts, and I quote Commissioner Johnson, that when the voters turned down the last tax, the county had to implement cuts, and we began a 3-year program of budget cuts to all county services. That's what happened. We turned down a sales tax extension, and what did we get for it? Reduced county services. The jail was not impacted, and if it was impacted marginally. So I believe that the question being asked by voters is false. It's misleading. I don't like the idea that we don't know how to wean ourselves from tax and allow taxes to sunset. And I also have to share many of the concerns that I'm sure Sidney will raise tonight, that jail is not the answer for all of our problems. I take exception to the fact that, yes, we've got alternative sentencing programs. Yes, we've got drug courts. Yes, we've got now mental health courts. Yes, we've got DUI courts. Quite honestly, there's no evidence to suggest that any of that means anything in the overall. Yeah, shake your head, John and Tom. I mean, shake your heads. And I'm hoping you'll prove me wrong. Where's the evidence to suggest that any of that has a reduction in crime or makes you or your families any safer? And I will suggest to you that it doesn't. In fact, across this country, crime is continuing to go down. There was just a report issued by the United States Department of Justice that suggests that crime across the country is going down and has been going down for the last decade. And the report says that stiff prison sentences and high incarceration rates were not the cause of the reduction in crime. That's evidence. Those are statistics that if we could spend another hour or two on this program, I could flush out, and it would have some scientific proof or data to support. Most of what I am always told by those in the county is anecdotal. Look at all of the great programs we have. I don't know if many of the voters have driven out on Midpoint Drive in the last decade or so. The facilities we have built are second to none. And so that's really the basis of my opposition.
Okay, John, you're a CPA. Talk about the numbers for us.
Thank you, Barbara. I'd be more than happy to. First of all, the proposed tax to be levied is 0.15%, and it is all allocated to operation. As a matter of fact, the cost to operate our jail is $19 million a year currently, and the proposed tax in the first year would raise $7 million of sales and use tax money. And so the tax proposal is to fund less than 45% of the cost of operations. But I was shocked to hear comparisons about cost of jail. We're not constructing any new jails in this. All of this is just pure and simply for operating costs. And we're only dedicating, as I said earlier, 45% of the money to funding operating costs for the jail. And so, as Troy and I have an opportunity to discuss things this evening, I just would like to know, we have more than 450 people incarcerated in our jail. I would like to hear, since apparently the proposal is to close the jail, what we're going to do with the people that we release from the jail. Are we just going to let them wander around our communities in northern Colorado? And I'm sure Troy and I will have an opportunity to discuss this as the evening wears on.
Sure, maybe we should discuss it now, because
Go ahead, that's fine.
I think that's where statistics come into play. Of the 454 people that are incarcerated, statistically, only 40% of those at any given time are actually sentenced to jail. People that have committed a crime, have been convicted, and now are serving a sentence. 46% of those are sitting in jail probably because they can't afford to post bond, or because the bond has been, for whatever reason, they haven't been convicted of anything. I don't know if people have forgot their ninth grade civic lessons. I haven't. Mrs. Warren was my ninth grade civics teacher. She taught me an awful lot. And one of the things I dearly remember is this right to be presumed innocent until convicted. These 46% people who are sitting in jail, yet to be convicted and sentenced, are innocent constitutionally. They haven't been convicted of anything. And that makes up a bulk of those sitting in jail. So, John, yes, we probably could allow the presumed innocent to walk free with reasonable bond conditions. You know, Commissioner Donnelly just shared with us that we've got crown jewel of all pre-sentence release programs. And so even with that, we're still holding 46% in our jail.
Hold on.
Can
Barbara.
I just add something very quickly? Because when you say we would not be safe if we let everyone in the jail out, you're right. But the jail does not hold any murderers or burglars, anyone who's a felon. Any violent offender
It does pre-trial.
is
That's not
It does
true.
pre-trial.
pre-trial, they haven't been convicted yet.
right.
So, yes, if they don't have bond, but the percentage of that is very low. We're talking about nonviolent offenders here. We're not talking about the real dangerous criminals.
We're not
Barbara,
talking
can I-
about
no,
nonviolent.
Hold on, everybody.
Okay.
Calm down.
Who has
Calm
the
down.
answer?
Okay, let me just address a couple things that were said. And I think very well intentioned, Sidna asked that we close, that the jail is full and it won't be less full unless the tax is not extended. But I want you to know there's currently 11 pods in the jail and 2 of them are closed. 2 of them are barred, the door's barred. No, there are no inmates that reside there except in the event of a flu or some type of infectious disease, and we can move people in there so they don't get everyone infected. To Troy's point about evidence-based practice and the lowering of recidivism rates, I think that we've been leaders, at least in the state of Colorado, in putting those types of practices into play. Restorative justice, rehabilitative programs, a multitude of different opportunities for people. And I want to talk about this pretrial issue a little bit.
Well, wait, let me ask
hold
a
on.
question about that.
Nationally, 60% of jails are filled with pretrial individuals. Our rate is 47%. If you think that's too high, perhaps it is, but it's a hell of a lot lower than it is other places in the country.
Yeah, my question is, how many of the people, now I've forgotten it, how much, oh, I know, it's a
Okay.
budget question.
All right.
If you don't have the money from the sales tax, will the pre-release and all these other programs be the first place to get the money cut?
They will have to be among the first places to get the money.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're not mandated services.
Okay,
The
so
county-
alternative
Barbara, the
sentencing and DUI court and these other things that you mentioned would be the first to either be cut back or
We're a political
go.
subdivision of the state. We do the things that the state mandates us to do. And we can do very limited other things, but they're limited. And so, the things that the county doesn't run youth soccer leagues, for instance, or swimming pools, or a lot of those other things that people love, but that might be sort of discretionary items in a city's budget. We do things like social services, public health, public safety, our district attorney, elections, the county clerk and recorder's office, and motor vehicle. Those types of services that are mandated essential services for us to perform. Those are the things that counties do.
Okay, so as a citizen, I might say, well, if I vote for this, you're going to keep all these programs. If I vote against it, maybe you will cut your budget there. Is that a fair assumption or not?
Yeah, that's absolutely a fair assumption.
Okay, Sidna.
And if he cuts the budget there, then we should not reelect him, because that's not a good choice. You've just said that is what's
Right.
helping people stay out of jail, reducing the recidivism rate. If you want to just have a gulag there in the Larimer County Jail, it's not going to help anyone. We need to solve the problems at the base of this huge incarceration rate.
And so
you
how do
can
we do
say-
that, Sidna? How do we
Well,
do that?
for one thing, there's the homeless situation. The Coloradoan has run 2 articles yesterday and today about the homeless down in Old Town. And what's going to happen to the homeless? You can't. It's not criminal behavior to be homeless. I'm sure that a lot of people would like to see them thrown in jail. Eventually, they do end up in jail because they're given a ticket, a summons, and then if they don't show up in court, then there might be a warrant for the arrest of the person. So then what happens is you put the person in jail because he hasn't shown up for court, because they arrested him once more for camping out because he's homeless. And then once he's in jail, he gets out of jail, he has court costs and any other costs associated with that he has to worry about, but he still has no place to go. He's still back on the street. So solving the homeless problem would probably solve a lot of your incarceration, a lot of people that are spending time in jail. It just, you start this cycle where they cannot get ahead, and they're in and out of jail, and they become a criminal for something that most of us would not consider a criminal act. That's camping in a city park.
But the issue on the ballot has nothing to do
With how city
tonight with
enforces.
the homeless.
City-
The
city
issue on
enforcement.
the ballot is,
Not city
should we provide
Control the city police.
sales tax revenue of about $7 million a year to operate about 45% of our jail? So the question before us this evening is a sales tax question about extending a sales tax question to operate our jail. It doesn't really have anything in my mind to do with the homeless.
No, I can agree with that. But on the other hand, if you don't fund the jail, where is the money going to come from? Because the $19 million has to come from somewhere. And you can tell us
Well,
that.
but let's go back to what Sidna talked about, and let's just break this down a little further. Because, obviously, I don't actually have any authority over the Larimer County Sheriff either, but I certainly don't have any authority over the Fort Collins Police Department. 4 years ago, almost, I guess, a few months ago, the residents of the city of Fort Collins passed the Keep Fort Collins Great sales tax initiative, if you recall, and that's a nominally $20 million a year sales tax measure, and approximately 20% of that money goes to police. I think it's been responsible for 15 to 20 additional officers being on the street of Fort Collins. I got this information from the City of Loveland's website since my friend Troy has been on the City Council. The 2013 budget for the Loveland Police Department was $17.1 million. The 2014 budget is $18.8 million, and the proposed 2015 budget is $19.8 million. That's a 16% increase in 2 years. Those guys aren't getting cats out of trees. That's not what they're doing. So unless you want the back of the squad cars to get pretty full, you can't increase spending on your local police forces and then try to cut the very programs that we all agree are having a positive benefit in trying to rehabilitate the folks that we're bringing in. I just think it seems short-sighted and maybe a little backwards.
Well, I can agree with you on this point, Tom. I share a concern not only with the jail tax, but so far you haven't seen my first vote on the city's budget, and I will not approve the increase that's being requested for the police department. We are slowly migrating toward where the only solutions to any problem in our society involve policemen and judges and prosecutors and lawyers and jails. And I think it's time maybe to roll ourselves back a little bit to where we can solve problems outside of the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
There's not a reason we need to jail everybody. And
We're
I want to
not jailing everybody.
Well, we're jailing a lot of people.
We're not talking about a national issue. We're talking about a local issue.
Okay, well, let's talk about the people that are sitting in your jail on
Okay.
pre-trial that have not been convicted of anything. And explain to me, Commissioner, why those people are there and why they aren't allowed to walk on bonds or bails.
Well, and actually, it's a great success story in the history of Larimer County is actually our pretrial release program. And 3 years ago, you were arguing against the pretrial release program.
I still argue against pretrial release.
And
It's
so
not effective.
What pretrial release does is, Barbara, is a program that says, because nationally 60% of inmates in jails are pretrial. They have not been convicted of a crime. So what Larimer County did was we formed a committee. We call it the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee. It's made up of a lot of folks, judges, folks in law enforcement, defense attorneys, district attorney's office, and a number of individuals have a stake in this. And they tried to decide what some best practices would be to try to expedite getting people out of jail faster. So if someone has ties to the community, they live here, they have a family here, they work here, they have a job, we don't believe that they're a flight risk or anything like that. We've worked with our judges to get them released without bond, with no bond, on a personal recognizance bond. So we try to do that in every situation we can, and of course there are situations that do call for traditional bail bonding. And so at any given time, my guys have told me there's about 34 people pre-trial accused of felony assault in the jail. Not convicted, but accused of felony assault. So obviously the judges feel that bond needs to be a little bit higher for those individuals, and some of them can't make bail. So that's one of the things that I'm actually very proud of that the county has done, is tried to get people out of jail when they haven't been convicted of a crime, because nothing is less free than a jail cell. Nothing is less free than that. So I think we actually have some agreement on that issue. Maybe you don't think we've done enough, although I can tell you, I don't think you want the Board of County Commissioners controlling the judiciary here. We want to have independent judges, and they will stand for their retention votes based on their conduct. But I think we've worked together well, and I think we've made some great strides in that regard.
Tom, you act like this concept of bail bonds and bonding out of jail is unique and a new innovative idea created by Larimer County.
Bail
People have
bonds?
been bonding out of jail since we've had jails in our
Right.
country. And
We're not doing bonding. We're doing pretrial release.
yeah, I know. And let me
personal
give you an example of pretrial release, how effective it is.
Mm-hmm.
I get arrested tonight for shoplifting. I'm thrown in jail because an officer decides I should go to jail and post bond. And I post my bond, and I'm subject to pretrial release. And now, between the time I get out of jail and the time my case is finally adjudicated, which might mean that I'm found not guilty or charges are dismissed, I'm checking in with your pretrial services. I'm required to check in probably daily. I may be required to go take random breath tests. I may be required to take random urine analysis. And if I miss one, I'll be rearrested and my bond will be revoked. Or if I go in because I'm a shoplifter and I happen to be detected that I've been drinking, my bond could be revoked as a violation. And I know you shake your head no, and I know your county staff is here no, and I'd be glad to sit down and show you real-world clients. I see this every day, facing bond revocation for non-alcohol, non-drug offenses, and pretrial services has one mode of operation, and that is check in and come take breath tests and UAs. That's wrong.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here, but I obviously dispute some of
Well,
the
it is
things
a-
that Troy has said.
Okay,
we
well,
dispute that.
I think we have some questions in the audience.
I kind of have a two-part question. This tax is going to sunset. It's going to replace a tax that is sunsetting. If operations, it seems to me logical that an operations funding should be a permanent funding decision rather than having to go back to the taxpayers every 10, 15, or 30 years. So why is this not a permanent tax if it's going to be an ongoing expense? And the second part of my question is, if the other county operations are funded by property taxes, why not do it the same way? If it's an operations and it's a county operations, I want to see it on my property tax bill and not see it as a sales tax. I'd like to have an explanation for that. Thank you.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to you about the importance of diversifying your tax base. Right now, more than 90% of our revenues in Larimer County come in from property taxes, and we need to diversify our tax base, and that's why there are issues today about bringing sales tax forward. The other side of it is why are we facing a tax issue? This is a tax issue every 10 or 15 years. The proposal in front of us this evening is to have a 25-year extension, which has been a rare occurrence in Larimer County. I would say that not all of the residents of Larimer County are from Fort Collins. My friends in Fort Collins would easily vote for tax extensions, but my friends in Loveland, hell would freeze over if you ask for a permanent extension of taxes. And so that's what my opinion is about why we've placed a finite number of years on this future extension. And the future extension is for 25 years, and with the exception of the environmental tax, we've never had a tax go that long in Larimer County.
I just wanted to say, I don't know how the other counties are funded, but one of my first points was that their jails cost a lot less than ours. That was my major point.
And I can talk about that a little bit, but Mary, I want to answer your question. Why not in perpetuity? I think that's a good question. But I also think that it makes some sense from time to time, as Troy mentioned. Let's take a look at this stuff. Is it still serving the purpose that it was intended to serve? We all pay a mill levy for the Northern Water Conservation District. I wonder if we've ever thought that maybe that thing shouldn't go on forever. But it won't.
If we could only get Congress to revoke that insane tax.
Well, yeah. So I think it makes some good sense to pause from time to time after a set amount of time and look at the program and look at the purpose of the tax and see if it still makes sense to continue it. And I think John's absolutely right about sales versus property tax. I think the county probably needs to diversify its tax base a little bit, or continue to diversify at least this aspect of its tax base. The other thing I suppose you could say is that folks who come here, or tourists and things like that, will spend a little money in restaurants and things like that. Will contribute to that service, and they do use some law enforcement services and things like that. Although this doesn't directly fund law enforcement, it funds operations to the jail. So I think that there may be an aspect of that where it's nice to have some other folks pay too that maybe use some of our services.
Troy, do you have a comment?
I've got a lot of comments, but
On that topic.
I think here, why 25 years? And I look around in this room, and the only person that might be able to change that, my daughter joined me tonight. She's 25 now. She'll be 50 years old when this issue comes back. None of us will be here to decide that.
How old do you
And-
think I am?
And so this really is a tax into perpetuity. It's 25 years down the road. Why don't we say, let's revisit it in 10 years? Why all of a sudden now 25 years? And I see this constantly with the county, Tom, with respect. We're putting these things on as with no new taxes on the ballot, with no new taxes, shall we extend this tax for, and then as you read down, a quarter of a century. I find that to be part of the deceptive tactic that's being employed
Yeah.
to get a tax passed and taxed for a very long time.
Yeah.
Okay,
I might
John.
point out that this is actually a tax reduction, Troy, and maybe reduction doesn't sink in, but we currently have a jail tax of 0.2%, and the proposed tax is 0.15.
Well,
I think
a
you're
tax
mistaken.
reduction will be when
Yeah.
they vote no. That's a tax
But
reduction.
I'm afraid
It's a
you're
larger
mistaken.
reduction.
It
Yeah.
was .2 to include construction of the jail. As soon as that construction was finished, it dropped to .15, I think,
No,
wasn't it?
it's still point
It's-
two.
no, you're
I would
wrong.
just
No?
add, just from a very pragmatic standpoint, the ballot language for the open lands tax was for 25, for a 25-year extension, and I think that it made some sense to have some consistency in the ballot language. You know,
Okay, I think we
perhaps.
have another question.
Thanks, Barbara. My name's Eric Sutherland, live here in Fort Collins. My question for the panel this evening really goes to the language in the ballot title. Given the fact that the last failed jail tax did not really change the funding for the jail, and comments that we've already heard this evening about the fact that really other programs are going to suffer if this tax does not pass, and the jail's funding is going to stay flat. Would it not have been better to give the voters a ballot title that gave them an idea of the fact that services across the board in the county government would be impacted by the effect of a yes or no vote, with a yes actually funding services across the board, a no vote limiting funding for those services? Thanks a lot.
I think the county attorney would suggest that we have to have a ballot title that reflects the nature of the tax proposal in front of us, which I think is a lot more narrow than just your question, Eric, about what is the overall philosophy of operating county government. I don't think we would be able to condense that into the language allowed on the ballot of 200 words.
Is it a legal matter?
I could, everything's a legal matter.
Oh, okay.
Thank goodness we have the lawyers, I suppose, but, you know, Tom, I think somewhat to Eric's point is this. This really is a tax cloaked in the jail, but that will support county services across the board. And I've mentioned this before, and I know that I guess is based on party affiliation, I should never suggest such a crazy thing. But I would support the county bringing forward to the voters a general sales tax. I do think the county needs to diversify its mechanisms for generating revenue. And I don't think there's any shame in asking the voters to pay a sales tax to the county, similar to what we benefit from with the city of Loveland, to support the services that all of us have grown endeared to. What I don't like is saying we need this money, not for the jail, because the jail is going to operate almost at status quo regardless of how this goes down. But we need this money to maintain all those other services that Commissioner Johnson alludes to in his editorial.
Yeah, but understand, the general fund, the dollars inside the general fund are fungible. It's the county commissioner's checkbook, if you're looking for an easier way to explain it. Those dollars can be spent on a wide array of services.
Correct.
You're right. So if you believe that this is a bait and switch, but you would support a general revenue tax, then support this, because you believe this is a general revenue tax.
Will you make this assurance to me then, and maybe I will? Will you tell me that if this tax fails, that the jail will suffer and no other services will be impacted?
Every service will suffer in Larimer County.
And that's the point. And that means that what this is really is a general sales tax request or an extension of an existing tax to fund general services out of the general fund.
The jail already suffers. You should go visit the jail, and you should see that we pay $1 million in overtime a year to the guys who are working, and the guys and ladies that are working in there. because of our budget situation, which makes it difficult to fund full-time employees.
I'm very
You have a guy
sympathetic.
calling in sick, and
The
you don't have
county
anybody
needs to-
else.
As John said, I would love to see the county come up with a means to diversify its revenue.
Right.
And if that means that it's going to take strong leadership to suggest we need a county sales tax,
We have a
I
county
think we
sales
can bring,
tax.
I think we can bring people together to work on that.
We have a county sales tax. This is it.
But I think when
We have
you-
three. We have one for open space, we have one to fund the operations of the ranch and the fairgrounds, and we have this that operates, that funds a portion of the operations of the county jail.
But
Go
can
ahead.
I just want to say that whenever you try to sell this tax, it's always, if you don't vote for this, not that we're going to have to cut back jail services, we're going to have to cut back everything else. You're selling it, as Troy says, as a general sales tax.
Okay, I think
And that's
we-
what's wrong. It
I
is.
think we
But
have
you would support a
another
general sales
question.
tax.
I'm not saying
But
that.
Troy
I'm on
did.
record as saying I
I'm not
would.
saying,
But
I'm
Troy
not
did.
saying I will.
Okay, but Troy
Okay,
did.
another question?
I have a question that really needs an answer, but I have a couple of quick comments.
No comments, just questions.
Well, when I came in, like Tom was saying that the tax is a general tax. So I don't know why, I mean, I heard you say it when I first walked in. And it seems like actually only John has been trying to deny that substantially. But the question is, what I need to know is, is it called pretrial release? Is that what it's called, or
Yeah.
pretrial? Well,
46% of the people in our jail are there for pretrial because of,
yeah, they're there because, in my opinion, and I think Troy would agree with me on this, because of excessive bail, which is unconstitutional. So the question is, I want an exact explanation of the program that Troy was kind of obliquely describing, like a full, direct explanation. Why can't these people just pay their bail, make bail, and get out? Why are they held there? Why do they have to report to anybody? Blah, blah, blah. Like, it's in the Constitution. It's in the U.S., I believe it's in the state Constitution, too. So that's the main question, is I'd like a full explanation, probably from Troy would be best, as to exactly what are we talking about here?
I don't know if I can give you a full explanation, but let me just say this. There is only one purpose. Let me underscore that. There's only one purpose for bail or bond, and that's to ensure the appearance of the accused at all court proceedings. Now, I don't know who's commenting, but I'm sure we'll get her name on the record in a minute. There's one purpose of bail and bond, and that's to ensure that the accused makes all their court appearances. We've now allowed that to morph into make sure you come to all your court appearances and make sure you remain law-abiding, make sure you don't drink, make sure you don't smoke marijuana, make sure you don't leave the county or the state, and on and on and on.
Hey.
So I can't answer your question, but I take exception to it. And so it's probably better answered by someone from pretrial.
Well, I think, isn't
Does
that
any,
Lori Stoll?
can you answer that?
Well, there's someone in the audience from that
What's
runs
the
the pretrial.
Okay, if she can answer that, that's fine.
Oh, really? Well, I don't, okay, but let's make sure we stay on the true subject. If you want Lori to give a brief overview of the pretrial program, I don't mind that, but.
Directly the subject.
No, it's not the subject. This is about the jail sales tax.
Can you give a quick answer?
My name is Laurie Stolen. There is no short answer to the question that was asked. Pretrial does, however, have two statutory obligations, and that is court appearance as well as public safety. So the 46% of the people in the jail that you're talking about, it's not black and white easy. They're in there only because they can't afford the bail to get out. Many of them have multiple cases that they're pretrial on some, they're serving a sentence on others. They may be on a hold for another county that they're not permitted to be released here on while they're on pretrial for a case here in this county. There are some, a very small percentage. We just did a review of all of the people that are in the jail pretrial, and we have found out that the majority of the folks that are in their pretrial are in there on felonies, and it's a very good reason that they're in there for public safety reasons. There's also many people that are in there that have shown that they will not show up to court. They will not follow the court's recommendations and conditions, and they are there to ensure that they will show up to be held responsible for the charges against them. So it's not a neat system, black and white, that it's only because they can't afford to get out. We also are very aware that we have much work yet to do on bail reform. Now, this is years' worth of conversation to have on bail reform. There is a new video that was just put out on the Colorado Story. We just had a national conference, the National Association of Pretrial Service Agencies in Denver, just at the beginning of September. Colorado is on the leading edge of doing bail reform and recognizing that we still have a long way to go and not using money as a tool to releasing people, that we know that there's a constitutional right for release by the least restrictive means, and our pretrial service program does an amazing job of ensuring people get back to court when they need to, with less than a 3% failure to appear rate and public safety rates that challenge national
Barbara, I think the
statistics.
topic deals with the jail issue.
So
and
I
not-
could go on and on, but I agree with John. This isn't really about pretrial, this is about a jail tax.
Okay, I thank you very much. I think it was enlightening to our
I
audience.
think it was very well. Good job, Lauren.
Well,
Yeah.
I can also point out that pretrial is divided into two areas. One of them deals with misdemeanors and the other deals with felonies. And the ratings in the misdemeanor class, number one of people in pretrial in the misdemeanor class are DUI folks. Number two are personal injury folks. Number three are under public orders, which are moving people around the state of Colorado. With respect to felonies, number one are property crimes, number two are personal injury crimes, and number three are drugs. And I would just urge people to look at the statistics. And these people, Troy might tell me they're innocent until proven guilty, but if you look at the numbers, they're not folks you want walking around the street.
Well, there you go. Therein lies the problem. John Knezovich will decide who will walk around the street. You know, we have constitutional safeguards in our system. And I tell you who I want to decide who walks around the street, and that's a judge or a jury. And if we're going to hold people in jail
And that's absolutely the way it's done.
because we don't want former council members or current council members or any of us here to decide who should and should not get out, therein lies the problem. And I respect the comments that were offered by pretrial services. I would expect pretrial services to come down here and advocate for pretrial services. Typically, military contractors advocate for military equipment and weaponry, and I get it. But ma'am, with all due respect, there's simply no evidence whatsoever that will support any of the statements that you've made. I know you disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
absolutely. It gets people out of jail, and the numbers do
What gets
bear that
people out
out,
of-
Barbara.
Tom,
Because-
you act like people haven't been getting out of jail until we came
Yeah,
up with pretrial
exactly.
services.
But you're complaining that there's too many people that have
I
bonds.
am. Let's go
that are-
back to a traditional, if you want out of jail, you post a reasonable bond to ensure your court appearance without all of these other
Go talk
ancillary
to-
programs
go talk
that
to the
cost money.
judges. You should be on CrossCurrents with Judge Shapansky. That would be a great.
Well, okay, now let's
subject.
get back to the
The
topic.
real issue.
And the topic is, how will this passage or failure of this tax affect any of these programs?
Well,
Will they or will it or won't it?
Yeah, it will absolutely affect. It will absolutely affect operations of the county in every way. It really will. The county has adopted a similar budgeting process to the process used by the city of Fort Collins, budgeting for outcomes, where we try to prioritize our services. We do a citizen survey. We look at services that are set that will be preventative in nature. Not lead to additional problems in the future. Things where we collaborate with other agencies and develop partnerships. Things that are our statutory obligations to services that are our statutory obligations to provide, and we go through and we score all of our services. And so, if there are cuts to be made, they will be on a scale based on the priority level of the service. So-
Okay, and what about the county reserves? We talk about using county reserves. John, do you know how much the county has in reserves? And the problem is that they had to use a lot for the fire and the
Yeah.
flood. I understand that. But what's left? Do we
can
know?
Can I talk? Yeah, the county has about $27 million in general fund reserves that are available to us. That doesn't include, we have about $10 million set aside to protect the bond rating of the county. We have around $3.5 million set aside for a Tabor emergency reserve that if we spend, we have to replenish in the same year. So it's essentially money we will never use.
Okay, John, is that a healthy reserve?
Yes, Barbara, it's more than adequate. So we have a Tabor reserve, which is the only thing that I'm aware of that is constitutional, and the rest of it is discretionary based on actions of the county commissioner and the county manager. And so the $24 million of reserves that Mr. Donnelly has just highlighted are earmarked for the county to deal with future problems of floods and fires, and so
Right.
we need a reserve, but
And as I mentioned, we have $100 million in infrastructure damage from the 2013 flood. So-
Okay. Sidna?
Could I just add, I think a lot of that, don't we get national and state help for any of that? Yeah, reimbursement. So I don't see that as being a real drag on our reserve. And I'd like to point out, I must be a little more optimistic than you, because I think a reserve will build up over time. And when we have another emergency, which I hope will not be next year, we will have the funds to pay for it. And I'd also like to add that we have no idea how much the sale of the recreational sale of marijuana is going to add to the sales tax revenue for the county. And that will not show up even next year, it will show up the year after.
We don't have sales tax. If you have your way, we won't have any, we'll only have sales tax for open lands and the ranch. We don't run on sales.
We have one last question,
Okay.
and then I
Well,
have to
could
go
I-
to your final comments.
Barbara, I want to show this. I wanted to show this graphic, and I know Ann probably can't put that on the screen. This is the county general fund from about, I don't know what year, 2005 forward. Here's 2008, and as you can see, our general fund revenue has been essentially flat for 7 budget cycles now.
Okay,
No
let's go to
increase.
our question.
25 years is a long time. What is, and I assume that Larimer County is going to grow in those 25 years. So the jail population should grow commensurately, it seems to me, perhaps in the same proportion as it exists now.
Oh, that's a great
If
question.
that is the case, what are you going to do with the new inmates?
Mm-hmm.
And will you be coming back for an additional tax after that?
Yeah.
And if not, will it all come out of the general fund, or what will happen?
I love that guy.
Okay,
And I got another graphic. Ann, can you zoom on this one? This is incarceration rate per 100,000 people. This is how jails are typically measured. Too much glare. As you can see, Sam, you can see that line. It's going down every year since our high in 2005. So at the same time, the population of Larimer County has probably increased 15%, perhaps almost
about
20%.
that,
So this trend line is going down, but the population rate is going up, and that's because we found other means to deal with folks who've been arrested for crimes. And I want to put this in perspective, just with a few facts and figures, real quick, real briefly. Hold on. And Sidney already shared one. Even in Boulder, the average incarceration rate per 100,000 people is 155. Ours is 141. Right across the interstate in Weld County, it's 214. Ours is 141. Adams County is a little larger than Larimer County, but close to the same size. They have over 1,500 people in jail compared to our 450. So I think we're doing a lot of the right things. What we want to do is with the permission of the voters, continue to do those things. Those things that are alternatives to incarcerating people, to throwing everyone in jail, to try to help rehabilitate offenders, to try to get mental health services to folks who need them, and to break the cycle of addiction for folks who have drug issues or alcohol issues.
okay, I call that your final
Oh,
comment.
you would. I knew you would.
Okay, Sidna, why should they vote
Okay.
for it or against it?
Okay, why don't I support this jail tax? The answer to that question is that in many instances, jail alone doesn't work and is thus a costly and ineffective approach. It costs us $118 a day to house an inmate. How do we know it doesn't work? Look at the recidivism rate. 1 out of 4 inmates released from the jail is rearrested with new charge within 1 year of his or her release. But the case that drove home to me just how ineffective the jail really is this one. Near Thanksgiving in 2011, a man who had been incarcerated 25 times since 2000 and spent a total of 585 days in jail, in the Larimer County Jail, was released. He had been arrested over and over again for trespassing, ethnic intimidation, nudity, and various other misdemeanors. He was homeless and appeared to have mental health issues. 3 days after this man was released, he was shot in downtown Fort Collins by a Fort Collins police officer. I like to think that if this man had been given supportive services in the beginning of his slide downhill, and instead of cycling in and out of jail, the shooting would never have occurred. In my view, the absence of a clear path for rehabilitation and redemption beyond an inmate's sentence perpetuates the failure cycle. I urge the voters to think about how they want their tax dollars used. Instead of pouring money into the jail, we need a different approach that will benefit the community better. We need to invest in services for the homeless, in mental health outreach, and other programs that will serve to reduce our incarceration rates and benefit the community while holding down costs. Invest in the community, not in jail, because jail alone is not the answer. Thank you very much.
John?
Excuse me, but I'm still swallowing. We do need jails. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And by the way, our daily cost for jails right now is $87.59.
That is incorrect. Oops, sorry.
Final comments?
Sorry.
She's apparently using my time, but let me just say that I think it's important to recognize the diversions that have taken place in terms of diverting the population out of our jail. We've done a great job in doing that. We've created a new wellness court that is just getting started in Larimer County. There's more reliance on community corrections. We're working with the parole and probation people to reduce jail population requirements. There are changes, I believe, in bonding rules, Troy. We use DUI court to reduce jail length, and we have greater emphasis in alternative sentencing programs. I think in the last 10 years, Larimer County has done what's needed to be done with respect to the jail, and now we're left with a problem of our jail costing us $19 million a year to operate for all of the communities in Larimer County, and we're asking the voters to approve a $7 million beginning a $7 million tax to go for the next 25 years. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Troy?
I've lived in Larimer County nearly all of my life. I cherish everything that we have, the services, the people that have made that possible, the residents. But this isn't a jail tax. This isn't about the jail. This is about maintaining a revenue stream to the county to provide all of those great services. And if we were calling it that, I would be up here with my dear friend, Commissioner Donnelly, and I'd be advocating and supporting it. But that's not what this is. And I don't like when we use public safety as a stage prop to misdirect or mislead the voters. And I believe that's what we're doing now. The jail is a function that we have to support, and we're going to support it. Whether this thing is voted up or down, we're going to continue to support it. What we should be telling people is if you vote no, you may lose services that you cherish that have nothing to do with the jail, and we've seen an example of that, and Commissioner Johnson said that in his editorial. I just simply think that there's a better approach, and we should call it what it is, and that's my disagreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This CrossCurrents program will be rebroadcast at various times during the month. Please consult your local listings for the exact dates and times. Copies of recent CrossCurrents programs are available for checkout at the 3 branches of the Poudre Library District and at the Loveland Public Library. Video is available at the League of Women Voters website. Thank you to our panelists. It was a lively discussion. Thank you to our audience for your questions, and thank you to our viewing audience.